How's it going, guys? If you guys are new to my channel, my name's Clay, and I'm a passionate freediver and scuba diver in British Columbia, Canada. By no means am I an expert in this field or a teacher, but I do know what it's like to be a new diver and have so many opportunities and choices and just not know where to start. So we're going to talk a bit about gear, what to look for, what to avoid, maybe some of the stuff that I own, and just a little bit of everything around the world of freediving, and we'll touch on spearfishing a bit too. So when I started my journey from snorkeling into freediving, the suits that I had were either secondhand or they were just surf suits. So the Beuchat Prestige is the very first suit I had, and the difference between a surf suit and that suit in the water for keeping you warm is absolutely astounding. Most people that I know have actually started along the same journey. They started with either secondhand suits or just really cheap surf suits. And that's nothing wrong with that, especially in the summer months. You can get by with that. However, the more and more you want to do this, you're going to want to be in the water in the spring, fall, and then winter months, which means you're going to want to stay warmer for longer. So getting a proper suit that fits you is very important. This is going to be a trend for all the stuff I'm going to talk about. The most important thing is you going to a dive shop and actually trying on these items yourself. Because for me, this Cressi suit, for example, it's an extra large, and it fits me pretty tight, actually. I'm 5'10" and about 190 pounds. But that Beuchat Red Rock suit there, for instance, it's a large and fits me exact same. And I know I tried on a couple Espelon suits, and their 2XLs don't fit me at all. So that's what I mean by each type of suit is going to be specific to you as a person and for your different sizes. So you have to go to your local dive shop and try everything on before you buy it. I highly recommend don't just order stuff online because some guy on the internet said these are the best suits. So something I'm going to warn you right now about is I'm not going to tell you what is the best suit, what is the best fins or mask, or anything like that. Because if you ever see a random guy on the internet telling you that X item is the very best, he's honestly lying to you. And the reason for that is so much of this stuff comes down to either personal preference, body shape and size, because my face is going to be different than your face, which means our masks are going to fit differently. So something that fits me amazingly well might not fit you, which is really important, as masks are probably one of the most important things freediving, but that goes the same with suits, fins, socks, gloves, pretty much everything you're going to be looking at. It's very individual to yourself. So I'm going to talk about the different types of stuff, but then I'm going to talk about the stuff that I like, but just remember that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best or what will work best for you. So I'm going to get right into this, but we're going to touch on safety because that's the key when it comes to being safe in this wild world we live in. So I'm really not going to go too in-depth into the safety because I don't feel like I'm the right teacher for that. But I do recommend if you're first wanting to get into freediving, you're going to want to look at ADA or WAVE. And both those have different levels of classes, but you're probably going to start with the level 1 of each of those, which each of these are schools and training that show you how to be safe in the water. And they're going to teach you stuff such as shallow water blackouts, and most importantly, the safety system and how to rescue each other if that were to happen. And there's a bunch of other stuff that they teach you in the class that's a very good thing to do, and I highly recommend it. But I don't feel like, again, it's my place. I'm not certified to teach, so I just highly recommend you take those classes. So if you're interested in the safety aspect, I'm going to throw some links down below. Again, I highly recommend it. But for now, let's jump into some gear, because that's where I'm going to give you some of the best advice. So in my opinion, the two main traits you're looking for in a freediving suit are going to be warmth and flexibility. And the two types of wetsuits you're going to be looking at are open cell and closed cell suits. So you might be asking what the difference is, because it's not super obvious. But once I explain it, it definitely becomes a little more obvious. So with an open cell suit, that's the kind that most freedivers wear, because they're the most flexible, but they are a bit more fragile compared to closed cell suits. So with an open cell suit, you're going to have a raw piece of neoprene on the inside of your suit that sits tight to your skin, and they're going to have the fabric on the outside of your suit. So what that means is it's going to sit tighter to you, it's going to be more flexible, but it is going to be a bit more fragile. So here I have one of my Beuchat freediving suits, and as you can see, there's fabric on the outside, but on the inside here, it's just the raw neoprene. And this stuff is really fragile. You can easily cut it with your nails, so you got to be really careful with this stuff. And when putting one of these kind of suits on, you actually have to use lube. So there's different kinds of freediving lube that you can use, but often people just use hair conditioner mixed with water. It's a very cheap, effective alternative to that. And then with a closed cell suit, you have the neoprene sandwiched between two layers of fabric, and each suit is going to have slightly different types of fabric on both sides. But what this means is it's not going to be as stretchy, so it's not going to fit to your body as nicely. However, it's going to have a lot more strength to it. which is why a lot of scuba divers pick the closed cell suits because you're going to have your BCD on and you have a bit more gear. It's going to damage your open cell suit if you were to wear one like that. Personally, I do wear my open cell suits while scuba diving sometimes, but it's not as good for them, as well as it's going to compress your neoprene a bit. So generally, I would recommend not using a closed cell suit for freediving, but it's a great idea to use while scuba diving. So technically there is a third suit that I haven't talked about. It's called a smooth skin suit, which means there's no fabric at all and it's neoprene all the way through, but it is extremely fragile and you're basically only going to use it for competitive line diving. Alright, now that we talked about what kind of suits mean what, let's talk about the thicknesses. So for me in BC, Canada, year round I wear my 7mm unless I'm going into some smaller warm lakes, which then I might not even use a suit, to be honest. Some of our small lakes heat up quite a bit. However, for the most part, people in our oceans are going to be wearing the 7mm year round. You can get away with a bit thinner in the summer, like I said, but if you start diving deeper, it's really cold. And the reason that somebody might want to wear a thinner suit rather than a thicker suit is because they are more flexible and it's more freeing, honestly. If you can get away with diving with no suit, such as you can in some tropical areas, it's absolutely amazing and you just feel at one with the ocean. And with your suits, you're also going to have the pants to deal with. And these come in two main types. You're going to have your Farmer Johns, which means these go up over your shoulders and it doubles up the neoprene on your chest area. And then you're going to have these ones which cut off in your waist. So there's not one that's really better or worse. Again, this is going to come down to preference. So this brings me to my next point, and that's going to be proper weighting. And this is going to change so much from the thickness of your suit to your personal size. So personally for me, at 190 pounds and about 5'10", with my 7mm suit, I wear about 12 pounds, which is a bit lighter than most people would say. But I would rather be light than heavy because most of my stuff is cleaning up with trash or spearfishing, which both involve picking stuff up. So I'd rather be a little bit too light than a bit too heavy. But to find out your proper weighting, the thing you're going to want to do is really put on your suit and hop in some water. So the main thing you're going to want to do is when you have your mask on, you're going to take a slight exhale in the water and you want your water line to be about here. If you find yourself sinking, that means you are far too heavy and that can be really dangerous. But if you find yourself floating up here, you do not have anywhere near enough weight and it's going to be really hard for you to dive down. But again, that's going to be so dependent on your size and the type of suit you wear. So the only way to know for sure is to go in the water. Alright, and now for probably the most iconic piece of freediving gear, the freediving fins. These are quite a bit different from scuba diving fins and allow you to swim through the water much quicker with much more agility. You can have three basic types of fins. For this example today, we're not going to get into monofins, and I know there's a big selection. There's going to have fins with different angles such as this, but we're just going to get to the very basics here. So you're going to have plastic fins, you're going to have fiberglass fins, and you're going to have carbon fiber fins. And with each of these kinds of fins, you're going to have three stiffnesses: soft, medium, and hard. And those are going to translate to just your size and body weight. For me, I'm going to want a medium to hard stiffness, but if you're someone 100, 120 pounds, you're probably going to want a softer blade because you're not going to be able to kick it as well as someone with my weight. So the main differences you're going to have is with the plastic ones, they're going to have quite a slow bounce back or recoil, and your kick isn't going to get as much power as one of these. So with fiberglass, you can bend them like pretty much in half, and you can see they bounce back pretty quick. Plastic ones are going to bounce back about half that speed. Very average guessing there, but they won't bounce back nearly as much, which means your power with your kick won't be pushed into propulsion nearly as much. And then you have the carbon fiber ones, which will have the most flex and bounce back. And as you can see, they have the most power that translates your kick into propulsion. So for beginners, I would just recommend starting with plastic, and if you like them, you can slowly upgrade the more you get into the sport. Alright, now arguably the most important part about any underwater sport is going to be the mask. And like I said, this is going to come down to your face because this is a very individual thing. Personally, I'm a big fan of the Beuchat GP1 because it has the GoPro mount, but that might not be for you. That's a very individual choice. There's a lot of other masks. I have one from SeaHack here. It's great as well. The main thing for freediving you're going to want to take into consideration is going to be the low volume aspect of it. When it comes to scuba diving, it's really not an issue because you bring down air with you, so you can always add air to your mask. But when you're freediving, the deeper you go down, the more it compresses, and this will actually suck to your face. So when you're going down, you need to breathe a little bit of air out of your nose into this mask. And so the less volume in this mask, the less air you have to put into the mask, and the more air you can keep into your lungs. So that's going to be the one main thing to focus on when it comes to masks. There's a few other things. I'm a big fan of the dark blackout skirts. Some people like the clear ones, but I find they let too much light in and it kind of disrupts what I'm looking at. But some people find these ones are a bit more claustrophobic and give you too much of a tunnel vision look. But I don't mind these at all, and I would say this is the more popular kind of skirt. But yeah, again, masks, very personal. Go to your dive shop. Don't listen to me. This isn't the best mask, nor is this one, even though I like these two ones from Cressi and Beuchat. All right, now for a topic that probably gets the most criticism, and that's going to be spearfishing and harvesting while freediving. But before we get into this, let's touch on responsibility and sustainability and regulations when it comes to harvesting. So no matter where you are, if you are thinking about harvesting, you need to know 4 key points before you even step foot in the water. And these 4 main things are going to be species identification. That is first and foremost. You don't want to misidentify a species. Knowing your area that you're in, knowing the times and closures, and then finally knowing the size and limits of the species you're allowed to harvest. And one of the reasons this is very important is because of areas such as all around Vancouver, because in the past they were hit so hard, you're not allowed to harvest any sort of rockfish or any sort of bivalve. They just got hit so hard in the past, we do not want future areas to become barren landscapes with very little fish in the areas. So practicing sustainable harvesting is very important. So this being said, I highly recommend going above and beyond and not targeting the same species in the same area every time you feel like harvesting fish. All right, now we can jump into some spearfishing and harvesting. So of course, everyone wants to know more about spear guns. They're the most interesting topic. However, if you're just getting into it, and this might be a little bit controversial, but I highly recommend you picking up a pole spear to start with. And my reason behind that is with a pole spear, you have to get much closer to fish, and it's going to be easier for you to practice species identification without having any accidents and shooting either the wrong size or undersized type of fish. So pole spears take far more patience and practice, but I find it very rewarding, and it's definitely a great way to learn in the sport. For spear guns, there is a wide variation between them all. However, for our waters here, I don't think you really need much more than a 75 centimeter gun such as this one. I have 2 bands on it, and a main part is I've had them snap before, so I just keep 2 bands on it at all times. I've also had where one of my buddy's guns snapped the bands, and I was able to give him one of my bands. So keeping prepared for those kind of things is mainly why I have 2 bands on my gun. I've only loaded this fully a couple times. On this gun here, you can load them both to there and there, and that is more than enough power for any fish in our waters. But you can also load it halfway, and that's perfect for smaller things like greenling. I really wouldn't recommend a gun such as a 120 centimeter. That's just too big, and unless you're doing something like halibut, it's really not necessary. I've shot a 20-pound lingcod at this, and this was more than enough. There are other types of guns with rollers and reels, like I said, but honestly, for our waters here, for anything that I've ever targeted, this is all that you need. You do not need a fancy wooden gun with rollers and a reel that'll cost you $1,500. It's really not necessary. Anything between the $250 to $400 mark is probably going to suit you just fine, but I really wouldn't recommend doing the $100 guns. They are going to work, but you are going to have to fix them. I've had this for 3 years now with very little maintenance other than changing the mono, and it has been more than capable for me. The only thing I have done to it is made a custom bigger pad on the back, which is essentially a block of wood with some hockey tape on it, just because when you go to load the gun, this does put a lot of pressure on your chest, and these smaller pads can hurt. So that's the only custom thing that I've done to my gun. So in full transparency, I do have a deal with Diving Sports in Vancouver. However, if you are in the market for new freediving gear, I highly recommend you going there. They have by far the most diverse amount of freediving gear, hands down more than any other shop in the area. And if you're on Vancouver Island, my friends Fred and Laurie, they own East West Freediving in Victoria. So check them out too. 2 amazing shops, and you can't go wrong with them. Anyways, guys, I know this wasn't a super deep dive into anything specific. I just touched on a few key points, and I hope this answers some questions for the very new beginners or the people that are just showing some interest into the sport. So if you have any specific questions, reach out in the comments down below or send me a direct message on any of my social media platforms at Aquatic Monkey. And I would be more than happy to talk to you. And if I don't know the answer to something, I will make sure I get a more than qualified person to give me the answers, and I'll pass it on to you. Anyways, that's it for now. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Till next time, take care.